Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome for a second time a best-selling author from Los Angeles, USA, Julie Winkle Giulioni. Julie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I am delighted to be back.
Thank you. Julie is the co-author of a book titled Help Them Grow or Watch Them Go, Career Conversations Organizations Need and Employees Still Want. And this book is coming out in September 24. She's also an author of a book titled Promotions Are So Yesterday. And if you're interested, go to our website and you can see our conversation with Julie on her earlier book as well. So Julie, my first question to you, what motivated you to update your book, Help Them Grow or Watch Them Go?
Ashutosh, it's funny. So many of the concepts in the book that we originally wrote 12 years ago, they're timeless. There's so much that hasn't changed about how, as leaders, we need to engage with others and contribute to their development and growth for themselves, for ourselves, for the organization. So much is timeless and evergreen. And yet the context within which this happens has changed dramatically. We updated the book last in 2019, and the last 5 years have been pretty consequential in terms of a global pandemic, the work from home situation. And so it seemed like the perfect time to just step back and say, okay, how do we need to think about executing this vital, essential, non-negotiable role of a leader, but to do it within the context of our current challenges. Employees who want to have a different kind of relationship with their work, a context in which some folks are working remotely or in a hybrid sort of situation where we're not all eyeball to eyeball day in and day out. And so it seemed the perfect time to do an update and a bit of a reset.
Well said. And how would you define career development in today's rapidly changing work environment?
Yeah, that is a great question. And if you ask 10 people that question, you'll get 10 different answers. I find that how we think about and the relationship that we have with career development is so unique that each of us kind of comes at it with our own personal slant. For me personally, I think about career development in terms of the skills, the ability, the knowledge, the experience, the support that we need in order to thrive today and be ready to thrive tomorrow. Knowing that tomorrow is a big old question mark. I mean, there was a time when you and I were coming up through the ranks where paths were clear, the future, maybe there were a couple of scenarios we planned for. Now it is wide open with so many possibilities and uncertainty surrounding that. So career development is really about helping people look around the corner and prepare as agilely as possible to be able to contribute and perform well in any number of different scenarios.
What a great response. Thank you. And what, in your view, Julie, are some of the common mistakes managers make when it comes to a career development, and how can they avoid these?
Yeah, that is a great question, because what I find is that a lot of leaders, a lot of managers, it's the mistake they make really is buying into assumptions that are wrongheaded. A lot of managers take action or fail to take action, which is the other problem, based upon these mindsets that aren't quite right. So as I talk with a lot of managers, I hear, I don't have time for developing my people. I'm so busy. And who's going to argue with that? Managers are maxed out, putting in way more than 40 or 60, sometimes 80 hours a week. So I get that. And yet that to me says they don't really understand what career development is. It doesn't have to be this big, massive 2-hour engagement, that it's the relationship they have. I also hear from a lot of leaders, well, I'm doing career development with my 2 high potentials. And sure, that's important, but what about everybody else? Imagine the lift that we can get when we dedicate some energy that way. And then the other thing I hear a lot is, well, is that really my job? Isn't that what training is about? Isn't that what, talent management, human resources are here for? And so a lot of managers are just ready to wash their hands of the whole thing and delegate it off to another function. And so as a result, we've got, employees who don't know how to get the kind of support, encouragement, networking, facilitation, all the things that as leaders we need to provide them. And that, contributed mightily to the Great Resignation and continues to undermine engagement and job satisfaction and cause our best talent to leave.
Well said. You also talk about 3 types of career conversations in your book. Tell me a little bit more about these 3 conversations or 3 types of conversations.
Yeah, thank you for asking, because this framework is really at the heart of help them grow or watch them go. And it's a simple and flexible and actionable way for managers and leaders to think about the development conversations they're having. And so the 3 elements of the 3 dimensions are a hindsight, foresight, and insight. So they're pretty easy to remember that way. And hindsight is all about helping employees look inward and backward at who they are, what they've done, what they love, where their skills lie, what their interests are, what are their values like, what they want to do, what they don't want to do, all of that, sort of foundational stuff that we need as managers to know about the other person to help them to grow. So that's what hindsight's all about. Foresight is about helping people look outward and forward. So what are the needs of the organization? What's happening in our industry, in our sector? And even bigger than that, what's going on economically, demographically, geopolitically, environmentally, that has a bearing on the work that we do. And that sometimes sounds kind of esoteric and like the domain of strategic planning, but all of that helps to define the playing field within which relevant careers are developed.
Well said.
And so then we've got insight, and insight is the intersection of those things. What I love, what I want to do, what I'm great at, and what's needed in order to advance the mission of the organization and industry and whatnot. And that's that rich space for mining for possibilities and actions and learning and the kind of growth that people are looking for. So there are 3 kinds of questions, 3 kinds of conversations that we as leaders can use to really draw out from employees the knowledge, the information they need to start thinking about, how do I move myself and my career forward?
Great response. And I'm sure a lot of our viewers and listeners will look forward to your book and understand hindsight, foresight, and insight in much more detail.
Thank you.
My next question. Sorry, go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, we actually have about 100 questions that sort to hindsight, foresight, and insight in the book. So, we frequently will say, you don't, as a manager, have to have all the answers. You don't have to have any answers. You need the questions. Correct. And so we've got those covered.
Correct. My next question, Julie, is why is career development considered the single most powerful tool for driving retention and engagement?
Well, the research is pretty clear. I'm sure you've seen it as well. There is just this study after study connects career development with engagement. When people feel like the organization, like their manager is investing in their development, they become more engaged. And that engagement is so important. We have engagement surveys and we put numbers around it. The numbers matter very little. What matters is what engagement does. And it's a lever that unlocks all of the kinds of performance indicators that organizations are working toward. So when people are more engaged, they put forth the discretionary effort and you see quality improve, safety is improved. When employees are satisfied and engaged, customers are satisfied and engaged. And we know that then that level of engagement translates into willingness to stay with an organization. There's, let's see, 83%, I want to get the numbers right, of the people who are leaving jobs say one of the key reasons is they didn't feel like they had the opportunity to learn and to grow. And so the other thing about, engaging in great career development that builds engagement is it really distinguishes a manager and an organization. You develop a positive employment brand that makes you really attractive, able to recruit the talent that you need because, naturally there's always going to be turnover, but being able to be known in the marketplace is, ooh, this is a place that really invests in their people. That becomes, what the differentiator is for the great talent that's looking for their next stop.
Well said. The other aspect I wanted your perspective on is, and I've often seen this over the years, you ask a manager, why aren't you going and asking for what's going to happen in your career? And the general response is, let my work do the talking. But I wanted to ask you, how can managers integrate career conversations into their daily interactions without feeling overwhelmed?
Ah, that is such a great question. And don't let me forget, because I'm going to go in one direction and I'm going to totally lose my thought. Remind me to come back to visibility in a minute.
Mm.
But in terms of integrating career development into the daily work, that is absolutely essential to deal with that issue a lot of managers have around, I don't have time. So the way we can do it so that it's not overwhelming, as a leader, there are probably hundreds of cues and clues every single day that occur around us that we just let pass us by, that if we picked up on them, would give us an opportunity to just slip in a little development. So what we talk about is growing with the flow, the workflow, finding ways to use the interactions you're already going to have with people, wring some development out of it. So when you pass someone in the hall and they say, hey, customer XYZ just, told me how happy they were with something I just did, you're going to say, good job. You're going to say something. Why not take an extra moment to just ask a question? Which of your superpowers was it that made that project go so well?
Mm.
Or, what did you learn in the process of doing that we can use in other parts of the organization? We can take those casual interactions where we're already going to spend the time and just elevate the quality and extract some development out of it so that busy managers don't have to invest more time. It's redeploying that time that they already have.
Mm.
And Ashutosh, I'm so proud of myself. I remembered I wanted to come back to something you
Visibility,
said.
yes. Mm.
So a lot of people do, and I know for years I have felt like, I don't want to be braggadocious. I don't want to be me, look at all the great stuff that I'm doing. And I always hoped that my work would speak for itself.
Mm.
And in today's busy environment where everyone is just maxed out, that doesn't always work. And so as individuals, as managers, we need to understand how to shine a positive light on the work that we're doing, the accomplishments that we achieve, the contributions that we make. And again, not in a, oh, I'm so great sort of way, but I talk about it's not bragging, it's actually flagging important information that people
Correct.
need to know about what you can offer and how you can make a difference. And so I think that's something for us as individuals to think about when it comes to our career, but also managers have a role in terms of helping employees elevate their visibility and the visibility of the good work that they have as well.
Well said. And why is psychological safety crucial for career development corporations? And is there a danger of proximity bias in remote and hybrid work environments?
Okay, good stuff that we're going to talk about.
Mhm.
So let's talk about psychological safety first.
Mm,
At the end of the day, career development really, to me, comes down to a relationship. It really is about the relationship the individual and the manager have.
mm,
And so frequently I will hear from managers, well, my people, they're not talking to me. They're not being authentic and transparent and, vulnerable and all these good things. And it's like, what
right.
kind of relationship do you have with them? Well, not much. We've got to earn the right to mess around in something as intimate as somebody's career. I mean,
Mm,
we're talking about goals
mm,
and dreams and
correct.
aspirations. This is heady stuff. You don't get to just come in off the street and expect that people are going to open up like that.
Correct.
Not only that, development, it's risky business.
Mm,
Trying something new, sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or 1 step forward and 2 steps back. People aren't going to do that if they don't feel safe. And
mm,
so as leaders, we need to demonstrate a level of benevolence. We need to be transparent and authentic ourselves. We need to let people know that we've really got their back.
mm,
And then, we have the right to expect that maybe they'll open up
right.
and have those authentic conversations. So psychological safety to me just feels like a really important prerequisite.
Absolutely. And the second part of my question, the proximity bias, I'd love your thoughts on that.
Yes, this is, kind of a newish bias for many of us that entered the scene, during the COVID days and since as we've had distributed workforces
Mm,
uh, or the norm. And of course, proximity bias is the natural human tendency to favor those who you're around all the time,
yeah.
and so we know that with remote and hybrid work, that too frequently out of sight can become out of mind and totally unintentional. But the research would suggest that in many cases, people who are co-located, who are coming into the office, have more opportunities for development assignments, for promotions, and the like. And so as leaders, we've got to really check ourselves at the door. We've got to really look at what our beliefs are about remote work. We've got to put in place systems that even the playing field and keep those people who may not be there day in and day out still front of mind. And we've got to make sure that we're being equitable in terms of the kind of development that we can offer. It's funny when we've written in the new edition a whole chapter on developing at a distance,
Mhm.
and we did a lot of interviews to try to get at what's the secret sauce, what's different, what makes it work when you are helping people grow who aren't co-located. And, I thought we were going to have a whole list of techniques and strategies. And what we heard over and over again is you got to do everything you would do with people who are co-located, but do it with more intention. And so that's the key to proximity, overcoming proximity bias is to bring intentionality.
You're so right about this, Julie. I was speaking to some other people, and I've experienced it myself. As a young manager, we always were told, be in the corporate headquarters because you're going to be visible there. And this thing has now got accentuated because people are working from home now. So you're very right.
You
But
are so right. And yet, as a manager, if you've got a team that's not co-located, it's on you to make sure that you're creating equitable conditions.
absolutely right. My next question is a little bit on technology. And technology has come into human resources in a very big way. My question is, what are some specific steps leaders can take to maintain meaningful human interactions in a tech-driven workplace?
Great question. Because It is so tempting, isn't it, to use technology in every way we can. And especially for managers, for leaders who may be uncomfortable with the human exchange, with those development conversations, how tempting is it to figure out, oh, well, go over and talk to the bot about that. And so, I think the first thing that step that a manager leader needs to take is to take responsibility and realize this is not delegatable to anything else. That as a leader, probably your most fundamental role, and certainly the role where you're going to make the greatest long-term difference, is through the investment that you make in helping those around you grow.
Right.
And so acknowledging that, I think, just, lays the foundation. And then upon that, then what leaders need to do is understand that it really boils down to conversation. And it
Correct.
doesn't have to be big conversation. It doesn't have to be formal conversation. It doesn't have to be perfect conversation, but that ongoing thread of dialogue about who are you? What are you doing? What do you want to do? How does that fit into the bigger picture? That ongoing thread of conversation is what really builds the kind of development relationship that employees today are looking for. Now, that said, I love technology. And one of the things I'm most excited about this new edition is we've built a book bot to go along with it. Now, the bot does not take the place of a manager having a conversation with the employee, but what it does is it elevates the reader's experience and gives him a place to go to plan those conversations, to practice the conversations, to assess their skills. So it's a bit of a thought partner for being able to take the ideas in the book to the next level so that then they can show up in their human interactions more effectively.
So time for two more questions for you. My next question is, what advice would you give to employees who feel their career development needs are not being met by their current employers?
That's a good question. That's a good question. Well, as individuals, we've got to own our careers. Nobody's going to care about them more than we do. And so if the organization, if the manager is not tending to them, then we've got to take some action. I think the first line of defense is to have a candid conversation with your manager. Again, sometimes managers just aren't comfortable with those conversations, and so they don't initiate them. So if the employee goes and kind of forces their hand a little bit, it lets them know how important it is to that employee. And so taking the lead, owning your career, opening the door to the conversation, I think is the first thing. And then the other piece of advice that I would have is go to your manager with a concrete idea that is a win-win proposition. If I want to learn more about finance, for instance, to go to the boss and say, hey, I would be happy to do the grunt work associated with budgeting this season as a way to learn more about how all the dollars and cents come together. Could I help you with that? And in the process, get these skills under my belt. Managers would have a tough time saying no to that. So finding that win-win where it's a mutually, reciprocally positive sort of idea creates the conditions where a manager can say, well, sure, okay, that makes sense.
Well said. Well said. And my last question for you, Julie. And before I ask you the question, I'm going to ask all our viewers and listeners to go and check out Julie's book, Help Them Grow and Watch Them Go. Book's coming out in September 2024. What is the one key takeaway you hope readers will gain from your book?
It's not that hard.
Okay,
it's something that we can do day in and day out and make the biggest difference possible.
Well said. And on that note, Julie, I want to say thank you. And as you were speaking, I was reminded of a very interesting anecdote from my own life. When I was 23, 24, working for British American Tobacco, there was an American boss who I had, and he told me that if you don't blow your trumpet, nobody else is going to blow it for you. But a few years later, found out there was a sequel to that. And that was that if don't blow your trumpet so hard that it starts to hurt people's ears. So,
I love it.
so Julie, thank you so much for speaking to me about your forthcoming book. It was fascinating to learn so many new things about career development from you. I love the 3 career conversations that are there, which is hindsight, foresight, and insight. And you just told us you've got 100 questions on these 3 topics in your forthcoming book. I think we covered a lot of ground about psychological safety, proximity bias. We spoke about technology, and we spoke about some interesting tips for people who are stuck in their own careers. Thank you again for speaking to me. All the very best for your new book, and thank you again.
Thank you, Ashutosh.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for The Brand Called You.